Hey, good afternoon, guys. It is Friday, April 19th, 2019, 1:30 p.m. New York time. And I just want to make a video just to kind of wrap up the week a bit. And I apologize, I've been a little busy, so I didn't get to record one after the some of the risk event video came out. And these risk events we had this week came out early this week. So it was, again, another pretty quiet week in the markets as far as risk event. I did make one the other night about the Australian dollar employment numbers, so I just figured I'd do a quick follow-up on that, and then a couple other things. So first of all, as far as the Australian dollar employment report went, so you can see right here on the screen how it came in. It was a good number. 25,000 was the actual for March versus 12,000 expected. Full-time was a really good beat, 48,000 versus negative 7,000 the last time. Unemployment rate stayed the same. Participation rate actually ticked up a little bit. So it was a good report. I mean, if we look at the preview before the report came out, which is down here. So, it says in here that, they're going to watch it, and that if a positive report would ease rate cut expectations and support the Aussie in short and near term, therefore a strong positive deviation in either the unemployment rate or employment change would present an excellent opportunity to buy Aussie. And of course, a negative one would be the opposite. So if we go and look at the charts with that in mind, so this is the Aussie yen, and they're all pretty much like this, but you see this red line, right? This is the hourly chart, by the way. See this red vertical line? This is when the news came out. So now that you see that, I'm going to take this line off. And you can see what happened. So like I said, this right here is when the news came out. The news came out. It was really positive. It spiked up, of course, as you would have imagined it did. And I actually did jump in long, and I got out almost immediately because it started to pull back. I actually was in Aussie Kiwi, and that had some good upside pop, but then I got out of it because there was no follow through. So, but I wanted to point something out because from a chart pattern standpoint, this actually was pretty predictable as potentially the end of a correction. Because if you look on this chart from an Elliott wave standpoint, you could draw this out as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we had this spike up, and then we went down again. Maybe this was a 1, 2, 3. Now we're kind of in this sideways correction for 4, and then probably go down again. And I think I mentioned this in my video when I did the preview that, although the Aussie has been really supported lately, again, this is Aussie yen, but all the pairs are pretty much the same. Here's the daily chart. I mean, it's been going up for a while. Like I said, the Aussie yen broke out of this sideways correction here, and I still think this probably will go up again. But at least in the short term, I'm expecting more downside. I think this has at least another leg down to go. The market has been pretty much asleep for about the last 24 hours and will remain that way, obviously, the rest of the day because we're in the Good Friday holiday, so a lot of the markets are closed, and even if they're not closed, there's just nobody trading. So there hasn't been any trade at all since for over 24 hours now to be had because of the holiday lull in the market here. So things aren't going to pick back up again until next week. But, so that's the Aussie. That's the Aussie yen. Here's Aussie Canadian. Again, same thing. There's the daily chart. It's been in an uptrend, and the sentiment has been good in the Aussie. Aussie Kiwi has really done well, although again it's asleep right now. But we go to the daily chart. I mean, after this really long downtrend, and you see, we've been going up really for the last few weeks here. It's been rallying up. And so the sentiment's been really positive, and I do think this will go up again. But it's important to note that, despite this really great employment number that caused an initial little spike on this lower time frame, the market still was going down. So it just kind of bears out two things. One, that there was, Elliott wave, there was market patterns at work here. And admittedly, I took this long. But I got out. I did end up with a small profit, but you could see immediately there was no follow through. Like it spiked up, it just kind of sat there and then immediately started pulling back. And with a number like that, and with the positive sentiment the Aussies had, I would have think that would have just rocketed, but it didn't. Again, it spiked up and immediately began to pull back, and then it just kind of bounced around, then actually started going down. There was time to get out. Because again, with numbers that positive, there really shouldn't have been any reason for it to not spike. Now, the other reason why this probably didn't have as much follow-through kind of got ignored. And let me see if it's even on my calendar here. That was Wednesday, right? Let's see. That was, I don't even have it on my calendar. Well, there was another set of Aussie news that came out at the same time. It doesn't even show on Forex Factor. It came out at the same time, and that was the business confidence. So it's basically they go out and they survey businesses, large and small, and they ask them, what do you think about business conditions? Good, bad? Where do you think it's going, in the near future, et cetera, et cetera. And they post that as a number. And so while the employment number came out good, the business survey numbers were not so good. They actually were a bit in a retraction. And so although that generally doesn't provide a lot of market movement, which is why you don't even see it here as a medium or high level impact, I think that did have an impact. And it really, like I said, it kind of got lost in the shuffle when the news came out. But I think traders were looking at it and saying, look, the employment numbers are great. But, the businesses are still not seeing a real sustainable long-term growth. So we're going to tamp down our enthusiasm on this employment number. And it gets back to what I said in the video, if you go back and watch the preview video, that the RBA underlying Royal Bank of Australia, central bank, still is a bit bearish. Now, they're a little bit undecided because the data has been decent. But their last meeting, they were still fairly dovish. And so I think the market may have said, well, employment numbers are good, but the RBA is still a little dovish. And this business survey wasn't great. So we're not really that thrilled about this. And it might have also been a little bit of the old, buy the rumor, sell the fact. Market's been rallying, kind of maybe expecting a positive employment number. They got it. Really wasn't anywhere else for it to go, because it had already been priced in as a good number. And then the business survey number wasn't great, and so market just took that as, well, here's our chance to take some profits and sell. So I'm not exactly sure what was at play there. Could be multiple things. But the fact of the matter is that the employment number burned out, in less than an hour, and we continued the downtrend. But again, I should go back to the daily chart. This is still in an uptrend, and I could see this little move down that we're in right now being maybe a wave 4, and we turn up and go again. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a little hard to see it on here. Probably have to look on my trading view charts. But so the sentiment might pick back up again. But I think in the short term, we're going to continue to see the Aussie under some pressure. So I think in the short term that there could be some shorts to be had here, but sentiment may pick back up again, and the market may look at it again and say, hey, the employment numbers were good, business survey, whatever, we're just going to, keep the party going. So again, that's my takeaway. Probably some short-term weakness, just technically things are kind of down, but in the medium term, at least, we could see some strength come back into the Aussie, especially against the Kiwi. We did have some risk-off sentiment this week towards the end of the week in the yen, which strengthened the yen, which also pushed down all the yen pairs. So anyway, so that's my outlook for next week. Short-term weakness, and then I'd probably move to the sideline, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it goes back up as the positive sentiment, wanes on. But again, always remember that the RBA still, at its core, fundamentally, is not all that bullish on the market. So you always have to keep that in the background. So anyway, so that's it on that. The other thing is we didn't really have much else. The next day, on Thursday, we had Canadian retail sales and U.S. retail sales, both of which were good on both fronts. Canadian retail sales and U.S. dollar sales were all good. So that would be on that was on Thursday. So go over and look at a couple of charts. So basically, so Thursday was, what was the date? Thursday was the 18th. Sorry about that. So that was on the 18th, and so that would have been, you know, somewhere around here. And of course, it was positive, and so the market did rally. So the 18th, you know, that would have been about 8 hours before the end of the day. So that would have been around 1600 on my chart as far as the time. So somewhere around here. And you can see the market did go up. And then, you know, then we've been down. But I do think it will go up. This looks like a little correction. And so that was really good numbers. I mean, that was really good for the U.S. dollar. And then the Canadian, on the other hand, their numbers were good too. Came out at the same time. So again, that's the 18th, around 1600 hours on my chart. And you can see what happened. Probably this candle right here. Market went up for an hour or two and then just moved right back sideways, went up again. Now it's going down again. And so the Canadian dollar, I got to tell you guys, has been very, very frustrating from a trading standpoint, whether you use fundamentals or technicals, because the number's been really good out of Canada. But yet they just can't seem to sustain any real long-term up move here. You know, this is the CAD yen. I mean, look at it on the daily chart. I mean, this is really not very pretty. Although, you know, it does technically look like it wants to go up. But it just, you know, with the numbers being so positive, it's just, you know, the CAD Swiss looks a little bit better. So, but, you know, considering, again, how good the numbers have been, I've been a little surprised at how soft the moves have been to the upside. And the Canadian is really frustrating because, you know, you would have jumped in on that and said, wow, those are great numbers. Going to take this thing long. And if right now it's back to about where it started before that news came out. That's about where the market's sitting right now. So more to come on that, I guess. But I think fundamentally the Canadian is strong right now. But, you know, oil prices have been trending a bit higher, which is their main export. So anyways, technically and fundamentally, you would think that these markets would be going up, but they've been pretty soft. So definitely a little bit frustrating on the CAD. So we'll see next week where things go. And that was pretty much it for the week. Just a quick look ahead for next week. I didn't even look at this, so I'm not going to really spend any time. But I just want to just take a quick glance while I'm making the video. So Tuesday we have Australian CPI. This will be important because, again, the RBA wants to see sustainable numbers across all their measures in order to be able to decide what they're going to do with rates. And CPI is an inflation number. That's probably one of their key measures, if not the key measure, when they're deciding on interest rates, is inflation. So, and then Wednesday we have the CAD, the monetary policy statement, and this might be why the CAD has not really been responding much to this news, because traders are waiting for this, because this is going to be more telling about how the Bank of Canada has viewed all this positive data. Are they going to strike a more hawkish tone, in which case the CAD will strengthen, or are they going to still be kind of soft, in which case, you know, it's going to probably continue to be a little frustrating and maybe sideways. So that could be why the retail sales didn't do much, because they're going to be waiting for this, because this is really going to be important. That's on Wednesday. And then we have the Japanese yen overnight during the Asian session. Unless they change their guidance, this won't do anything. They're always going to show these as red because it's a central bank. But you know, I'll wait to read some of the previews of this. But if we keep reading what we've been reading the last couple of years, which is basically they're not expecting to make any substantial change, then that's not going to do anything. But we'll keep an eye on it. You never know. And then we have durable goods from the U.S. You know, you need to see a nice deviation on that to get any real motion. Kiwi trade balance, that could be important. They have it as mid-level, but again, with how weak the Kiwi is, if this comes out worse, especially they're expecting a better number, so if this comes out worse, it's going to continue to disappoint the market. And then we have GDP, advanced GDP numbers on Friday on the dollar. Again, I'll be looking for some positive news on that. They're expecting it to stay about the same. So if we get positive deviation, that will continue to support the dollar. But certainly the main things for next week, at least on the calendar, is going to be the Bank of Canada and Aussie CPI, so early on in the week. All right, so I'll leave it there, guys. Hope you have a great weekend. It's a holiday weekend for many, for religious, for today's Good Friday and then Easter on Sunday. So if you're recognizing, celebrating that, I hope you have a great weekend, but have a good weekend anyways. And I know I need to make a quick update on my crowd trades, which I probably will do that separately, so I just don't make this one so long. All right, so anyways, guys, that's it for now. Be sure you like the video, comment, share it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Those are the main highlights for next week, those two events, so should be some good trades to be had there, hopefully. Talk to you soon, guys.